Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. My name is Roger Bisessa. I'd like to welcome you to our program, Our Islam, Peace, Not Hostility. This is a program brought to you by the Ahmadiyya Anjuman Nishat Islam Incorporated of Trinidad and Tobago, an organization promoting a peaceful Islam, a tolerant Islam, an intelligent Islam, an organization dedicated to promoting the pristine Islam as taught by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. Today we continue with our series on mental wellness, and we're pleased to welcome our guest speaker, Victoria Siewnarine Geelalsingh, a practicing clinical psychologist. Victoria works alongside Parenting TT and is an executive member of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists. She works with persons of all ages, offering psychotherapy and psychological assessments. She's a wife, a mother, and is much involved in community work. Her passion is working with children and adolescents. We now give you Ms. Victoria Siewnarine Geelalsingh.
Thank you, Roger, for that introduction. It's so very good to be back here with you today. Thank you to the organization for having me again. Good afternoon, viewers. Today we're going to talk about depression. It's something that a lot of us would have heard about before. It's something that we take for granted. When people say that they're depressed, we often think that it just means they're a little sad. So what is depression really? Well, depression is a complex mental health disorder, and the symptoms can range from mild but still be very debilitating, or it can go to severe. What are some of the symptoms of depression? Usually, when we think about depression, we just think about the sadness. We think about people who don't want to go anywhere, they stop taking showers, but really, depression is a lot more than that. Yes, sadness is one of the main symptoms, but people who feel depression often also feel guilty, and they feel a low sense of self-worth. What does that mean, low self-worth? Well, we all talk about self-esteem, and self-esteem is how well you feel about yourself. But self-worth talks about how much you think you are worth to the people around you, and therefore how much do you think you are worth to yourself. So when someone experiences low self-worth, really what they're experiencing is that they feel as though they're not valuable to the people that are around them. They don't feel that they can do anything positive, or that they can contribute to anyone's life. In addition to these symptoms, we have a loss of appetite. You find food is not flavorable, it doesn't excite you, you have no cravings, you don't want to have any food. You basically have no appetite. Time goes by and you don't even feel hungry. It affects your biology, because biologically after a couple of hours insulin levels drop in our bodies and we feel hungry. That's the physical phenomena of how hunger works. But when we're experiencing depression, those chemicals, and depression is actually related to chemicals in our bodies, those chemicals prevent us from feeling hunger, and therefore we experience loss of appetite. In addition, we have no energy, tiredness, a feeling of being slowed down. So imagine somebody who's ever told you that they feel depressed before. You tend to see those slow, lethargic movements, as though there's no purpose in anything that they're going to do. And that's a classic symptom, and a lot of times we think, well, they could just snap out of it. They think it's easy. People may think that it's easy for that person to just speed up, get it done, hurry up, come on, let's go. But it really isn't that easy. Another symptom of depression is isolation, and a person experiencing depression tends to isolate themselves. They would stay in their rooms all day, they wouldn't want to come out, and it gets difficult for loved ones, family members and friends to deal with things like that, because oftentimes we really are trying our best to get somebody, out of the house, get them to do something fun, but it's extremely difficult for them to do. People who suffer with depression also have disturbed sleep. Now, on a regular basis, if we lose sleep, we wake up the other day. If we're not rested, we're crabby, we're irritable, we can't go through the day properly. Could you imagine, therefore, if you add symptoms of depression or depressive mood onto that, what that lack of sleep is going to do? That person's physiological well-being is going to start to break down because their psychological well-being has been breaking down over time. So a disturbed sleep pattern is something that you definitely want to look out for. When that happens, it tends to affect concentration. So you find that persons who suffer with depressive symptoms or depressive mood have difficulty concentrating. And then finally, as I would have mentioned in my last segment with you, there would be thoughts of suicide. So when we think about suicide, a lot of times, in our culture, we may think, oh, that person's just saying that because they want attention. But really, if you think about it, even if, let's just pretend that we're in that space where someone is talking about suicidality because they want attention, let's just think about what that means. It means that that person, in their minds, would have to feel such sadness, such isolation, such low sense of self-worth, that when they think about getting attention from you, what they think about is taking their lives. Let's just take a minute and let's think about how severe that actually is. That if you want attention, the way that you would think to get it is to take your life. So then suicidality or thoughts of suicide can't be just because they want attention. There has to be underlying factors and more severe factors behind wanting that attention. So it's never something to ignore. So I'm just going to recap it quickly. Symptoms of depression, what do we look for? We look for isolation, we look for sadness, for guilt, low sense of self-worth, a lack of energy, sleep disturbances, poor concentration, a loss of appetite, tiredness, a feeling of being slowed down, anger. We didn't talk about anger. Now, when all these symptoms add up together, imagine somebody trying to deal with all of it, and what they're actually going to start to feel is a lot of anger because they can't deal with it effectively. Their efforts may fail to eliminate the symptoms or to even lessen the symptoms. So they start to feel these strong emotions, and when they're in that state of confusion or that state where they don't really understand what's happening to them or how to help what's happening to them, what those emotions manifest as is anger. And in addition, and I keep saying in addition because yes, depression is complex, it just keeps adding and adding and adding. What else is added onto it is substance abuse. So imagine somebody whose minds are flooded with all of these chemicals that are making them feel low, and then they add on top of it an inhibitory substance. So say alcohol, which is one of the most common ones in our country. When you add that onto those negative emotions and it inhibits the neurotransmitters in your brain, what it actually does is it slows you down more. So then the symptoms of depression that you'd already been experiencing is worsened now because of substance abuse. So it's just another reason to be responsible with the use of substances. So those are the symptoms. Where does it come from? Where do they start? How Like, what makes a person begin to feel depressed in the first place? Well, depressive symptoms are a complex interaction of social, psychological, physical, and biological events or factors. So social, which means your relationships; psychological, which means the way you think and your emotions; physical, which means what's happening with your body; and biological, which refers to your genetics. So many times people with a family history of depressions often finds that it's easier for them to experience depressive symptoms themselves, and that's because of the familial history. It means that the way that people in their family may have coped with depressive symptoms, or simply their genetics has passed down, and they would have either learned maladaptive ways of coping, or they would have had a genetic contribution to experiencing depressive symptoms in the first place. So that added on to their psychological state. So psychological state of having been a trauma victim, or having been bullied at school, or having endured circumstances where they were caused to feel less than or inferior to somebody, not being able to achieve expectations of others, be it unrealistic expectations or otherwise. So this is where we're talking about now schoolwork, academic achievement, sport achievement, or even in work. All these things add up together. And then the social environment, it talks about their friends. So whether they were bullied, whether they're accepted, whether they're considered popular. And you know, these days we have so many things that people compare themselves across. It's not just how many marbles do you have to play pitch. It's what kind of phone do you have. Is it an Android? Is it an iPhone? You know, so there are a lot of things now, and the days are definitely different, I can say that. I grew up climbing trees and putting water into dirt and making mud pies. So the days are far different than how they were before. There are a lot more things now that people compare themselves across. And because there are so many other categories, there are a lot easier reasons why people can feel this low sense of self-worth, which really is the thing that can push it over the edge. So what happens if depression is left untreated? A lot of times we meet people and we don't want to deal with their symptoms. We just wish they can snap out of it, and we want them to get through this phase in their lives. So we leave them. We say, okay, they want to isolate themselves, fine. When they're ready to talk, I'll talk to them. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just not pushing myself onto them. When they're ready, I'll be here. But what if they're never ready? What if they're never motivated enough to snap themselves out of what they've been experiencing? When depression is left untreated, it leads to more stress. And more stress leads to a worsening of the life situations that they're experiencing at that point in time. So let's suppose that it's someone who's working. Their depression may be affecting their social interactions with their peers at work. And if you're working in a separate department that has to communicate with another department, if you're lacking in your communication skills, then that's definitely going to affect your job, and it's going to affect your functionality. If left untreated, that depression is going to create more stress. And that additional stress is further going to hamper your ability to communicate effectively on your job. And if your job is based on that communication, then what can actually happen is you're going to lose your functionality at work. You're not going to be able to actually get your job done, and it's going to create increased depression, because at that point you're in a hole and you're digging further into the hole and you don't know how to get out. There's no light and you don't know what direction to go into. So when your life situation gets worse, then you go deeper and deeper into depression. And the worst of it is that that person can begin experiencing suicidality or suicidal ideation or suicide thoughts. And that is the point that we don't want to get it to. So at my last segment, I would have said over and over again that suicide is preventable. And we want to remember that. If depression can lead to suicide and suicide is preventable, then it means that we need to treat this depression. So therefore, what can we do? You can travel. I know it's difficult sometimes financially or to get the time off, but taking a vacation or even a staycation for 2 days can really affect your mood. I mentioned as well in our last segment that we live in a beautiful island. There are so many things that we can do, so many places that we can go. We have a lot of hotels here if you just want to go relax by a pool, or we have beach houses, we have turtle watching. We have, fun water activities, hiking, lots of waterfalls, a lot of tourist attractions. Sometimes it's just a matter of taking a drive. And, travel doesn't need to be out of the country or out of our Twin Isles. It could be right here. You don't have to go very far. But that's something that we can do. Traveling uplifts your mood, because you get to experience more of nature. You get to experience a time continuum where you don't have your regular routine, you don't have your schedule, and therefore you don't have the stresses of having to get things done in a particular time. You can visit a doctor. Many times when clients present with depressive symptoms, it could be because they're dealing with an underlying physical condition that they're not aware of, or that they're not aware of how to treat. So visit your doctor, have yourself tested. A lot of times it could be an adjustment issue with dealing with said physical condition. So for example, if someone has diabetes but they're not sure that they have diabetes, or they don't know yet, what they would have done was started to experience negative symptoms. So when they're eating, they would feel woozy. If they have their sweet desserts or have too much of it and their body can't deal with that extra sugar, then they may experience glassy eyes, their bodies might start to retain liquid, and they wouldn't be able to understand what's happening with them, because at that point they don't know as yet that they would have had diabetes. But if they visit a doctor, their doctor would be able to match their symptoms with the disease, and then the doctor would give them that diagnosis. And in addition to the diagnosis, the doctor would also give them treatment recommendations which they would be able to follow. So at first, the worry and the depressive symptoms or the adjustments of having to deal with these negative experiences would have been clarified, and then they would have been able to get recommendations to help them deal with it. So many times when depressive symptoms are as a result of difficulty adjusting to a lifestyle disease, following the recommendations from your doctor is going to help to alleviate the physical symptoms as well as the negative psychological symptoms that come along with it. In addition, something simple as taking our vitamins. It's so important that we keep our immune system boosted and strong. And taking your vitamins daily is another way to just get that. I mean, yes, we can eat healthy foods and we can eat fruits and vegetables every day, but realistically, how many of us are able to maintain that sort of meal plan to get enough vitamin C or vitamin B into our diet? Another thing we can do is we can take our antidepressants, and not just antidepressants, but any prescription medication that was given to us should be adhered to, and that's really important. A lot of times I think it might be a cultural thing with us that when our doctors give us prescriptions, we take it until we start to feel better and then we stop. Or we take it until there are negative side effects, and because we don't want to deal with those negative side effects, we stop taking it altogether, and we never mention any of these things to our doctors, or we go and we lie to our doctors, which we most definitely should not do. What we should always do is be honest about how we're taking our medication. If you have negative side effects, tell your doctor. They would be able to either adjust the dose or give you an alternative medicine to help you deal with the same symptoms. It's really important. Another thing you want to do is try to sleep a minimum of 8 hours every night. It's going to be difficult if you try to fall asleep at 4 a.m. and sleep till 12 noon. There's going to be a neighbor whacking his yard, or there's going to be somebody washing their car, making some sort of noise that's going to disrupt your sleep. So try as much as possible when you're aiming for these 8 hours of sleep to get it at night when other people are sleeping as well. Have positive thoughts. That is absolutely easier to say than to do, but we'll talk about it in a little while. Try to maintain some kind of creativity. What does that mean? It means go outside, paint a pot, put a plant in the ground, do some DIY crafts with your hot glue gun, throw some paint against a blank sheet of paper. It means anything. Use color, use your hands, use your concentration, make something. It could even be baking a cake or making cupcakes. Listen to music. This is always a feel-good thing that we can do. And you know what? Dance. Listen to music by yourself and show yourself your best dance moves, because that's when we have them anyway, when we're by ourselves. Another thing you can do is you can create a schedule. What the schedule is going to do is it's going to help you cope with being functional in your environment. It's going to help you to get the things that you have to do done while you're coping with your psychological symptoms. Have a bath. A lot of times when people experience depressive symptoms, it's difficult for them to get up and have a bath. And that's a real thing. It's realistic. They're not motivated to be clean on the outside because they don't feel clean on the inside. On the inside, they're just a lot of mess, a lot of confusion. But getting up, taking a bath, washing your hair, putting on clean clothes, and changing your sheets and lying down on clean sheets is going to help to boost your mood. You can practice yoga. Yoga is meditative, and you can even practice mindfulness, which is going to help you be aware of your body and the space that it's in, help you be aware of your surroundings, and it's at the same time going to help you to clear your mind and relax your mind. And then lastly, you can communicate. It's very important to practice communication, just to talk it out. Sometimes we don't know what we're feeling unless we say it to somebody and we hear ourselves actually say it. And that's when we experience something that's called an aha moment, which is where you realize that you've known something all along, but you just didn't know that you knew it. So what can we do? Those are individual things that we can do, but as a step-by-step, what can we really do to get ourselves out of depression? And if you have a pen and a book, I suggest you get it and you take notes and you jot these points down. So before I start with the points, I just want to say that these things are to help you cope with depression, but at the same time, it can help you cope with grief. Now, depression and grief are separate. The sadness that you feel from grief or from losing somebody that you love is different from the sadness that you feel from depression. Just because you're expected to feel sad when you're grieving, it's realistic for you to not want to do anything. It's realistic for you to have low motivation. You know, it's an actual situation that causes these realistic negative low emotions. But the way we deal with grief and the way we deal with depression is similar. So if you're taking notes, number one, meet yourself where you are. Be open with yourself. Be accepting and be loving towards yourself. You cannot expect yourself to go from 0 to 100 without passing through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and all the other numbers on the way up. You have to meet yourself where you are, know the space you're in, look at yourself in the mirror, look at the mess that you are, and say, okay, today I am here, I know I am here, tomorrow I'm going to be one step ahead. Number two, if you need to wallow, then do it. It's okay, but do it constructively. What does that mean? It means if you're feeling sad, allow yourself to have that sadness. Cry your tears. If you feel to cry, don't hold it back. Don't suppress it. Allow yourself to feel your feelings as much as you can. If you feel anger, allow yourself to feel the anger. But don't stay there. When you finish crying, when you've finished feeling angry, when you've finished feeling pity, come out of it. Feel it and then leave it. One really good way to help you do this is to write or to journal. So you just write out all those tears and let the tears drop on the page and let it wrinkle up the page. That's okay. It's not for publishing. It's just for you to see. Write it down and then just leave it. Number 3, know that today is not indicative of tomorrow. What does that mean? Give yourself the grace to accept that if today is difficult, it does not mean that tomorrow is going to be difficult. Today could be really bad and tomorrow could be really good. So when you get to a point where you think, I cannot take it anymore, it's just getting bad, remind yourself that that's today. Tomorrow might be different. And on that point, we go on to number 4. Assess the parts instead of generalizing the whole. So that thing that makes today so bad, it doesn't mean everything is just getting bad. It means that one thing is getting bad. And if you stretch your imagination, you might be able to find things that are getting good. So let's think about this from the perspective of grieving. When we grieve for our loved ones, we think about when they were ailing, or we think about their sickness, or we think about all the things that we didn't do. And it really affects us. Now, according to number 2, when that comes to you, you go ahead and you let yourself think about it and you let yourself feel it, because you need to feel your feelings, but then don't get stuck there. So then you tell yourself, okay, there are 14 really bad things, but then stretch your imagination and find the 14 really good things. And oftentimes when we do that, what we can find is that the good things may weigh out the bad things. Not in all parts, because sometimes our minds really cannot go to all the good things, but that's why you need to stretch your minds. You need to make yourself do it. Feel the negatives, but also allow yourself to feel the positives. Number 5, do the opposite of what the depressed voice says to do. Wow, that is a really hard thing to do. So this is where we're talking about those positive thoughts. Remember, I told you I'd come back to it. The depressed voice is going to be negative. It's going to say, you look terrible, stay home. It's going to say, you're no fun, nobody wants to be around you. But what you need to do is you need to be purposeful at this point. You need to talk yourself into self-help. And what that means is, if you say you don't look good anyway, you say, you know what, doesn't matter. Everybody knows what I look like. They know that I don't look so bad usually, so it's fine if I don't look if I don't look good anyway. I'll just go anyhow. Or if you think it's not going to be fun, you tell yourself, you know what, it's not going to be fun, but at least I'm going to get out of this room for a change, because I've been in here for 2 weeks or however long. You find a way to turn around the negative thoughts into positive thoughts. You find a way and you make it happen. Imagine if it were your best friend saying those negative thoughts to you. What would you say? You would try to find a silver lining, right? Now, it's not good when we're empathizing with other people to try and find a silver lining, but when we're talking to ourselves and we're trying to be purposeful, then it's okay. Number 6, set attainable goals. So we spoke about this a little bit before when we were talking about meeting yourself where we are. If you're at 0, you cannot get to 100 in 1 week. It is unrealistic. As a matter of fact, if you do manage to get to 100 in that one week, then it means that you probably pushed yourself too hard, and it's unhealthy in the long run. 7, reward your efforts. So that bath that we talked about, getting up, finding that motivation to go into the shower, turn it on, stand under the water, soap, that's going to take so long, shampoo your hair. When you come out, tell yourself, good job, you did it. Everything counts. Every effort is a good thing. Create a routine. We spoke about that before. And remember, lastly, and it's a big lastly, gratitude has a long-lasting positive effect on overall mental health. I'm going to say that again. Gratitude has long-lasting positive effects on overall mental health. So write a thank you note, write a thank you post-it. It doesn't have to be a fancy card. It could be anything to thank anybody. You don't actually ever need to give it to them. You can just buy a stack of post-it notes and write your thank yous on it and keep it in your room. And you can eventually give it to them when you leave your house, but it's for you to allow yourself to experience gratitude. The last thing that I want to say is that spiritual beliefs have actually been linked as protective factors against depression. And I think that that's incredibly important in our society because we have a lot of spirituality here. There are many different faiths, and having that connection or that belief that there is a supreme being, a power over us that helps us to overcome, can actually protect us from reaching the point of suicidality. So that's really important. I want to thank you so much for sharing this time with me today. I want to continue to encourage you, as always, to learn more about mental health, share the knowledge that you know with others, and each day try to be better than you were today. Thanks again so much.
Thank you very much, Victoria, for that very informative talk. And thank you, viewers, for joining us this week for our program. Tune in again next week for another episode of Our Islam, Peace, Not Hostility. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.